We're planting the seeds of greatness, climbing up towering podcast stalks, and making our way into the video game cosmos. Welcome to the Impact Factor. The Impact Factor is what happens when two scientists and two best friends get together to talk about video games. My name is Alex Samocha, and I'm joined this week, as I am every single week here on the Impact Factor, by the guy who also just got on stage to rave about his $99 Apple Pencil, my co-host Charles Fliss.
Yeah, man, you know, Jack climbed the beanstalk, and it turns out the giant's treasure was just a warehouse full of Apple Pencils. That's what it was. That's all it was. It was. It's not a stylus, remember.
No, it's not
a
stylus
because,
no.
You know, Steve Jobs told us, if you see a stylus, they blew it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't want to say they blew it, although that press conference was awful.
Oh man, it's a strange press conference. I mean, you know, like stepping back to Apple Pencil here for a second, that is such a hilarious kind of thing because that room is filled with Apple fanboys, filled with people who absolutely love Apple products and like are used to like how dumb like iPad and stuff is named. But that at the like announcement of the Apple Pencil, there were audible laughs throughout the crowd. Oh man,
why didn't they just call it like the iPencil? Or the iPencil.
I think even just calling it a pencil is... Oh, man.
They should have called
Works against them, too, because this is a $99 stylus.
They should have just called
for your $800 iPad Pro.
Should have just been, like, the Apple cigar or something like that. Like, just if you're gonna be ludicrous about it, go all the way.
I know. I mean, come on.
Burn your ideas into the tablet with the Apple cigar.
No, hey, I mean, I'm kind of excited because I've been telling myself for a long time now. I got the phone that I'm currently using.
You're not buying an Apple Pencil. You're not buying an iPad Pro.
Oh no, I'm not.
You're not doing that.
No.
Because if you've got $900 kicking around, you're buying a real computer.
Yeah, exactly. No, I would spend that to actually make like a desktop. No. I've been telling myself for a long time now that like once the new phones get released, I'm going to get a new one. Because take us back to fall of last year. I was like, oh, man, this is when I could upgrade. Actually, I was already a year late to upgrading there. I'm like, this is when I'm going to upgrade. I'm going to get a new phone. This iPhone 4 sucks. But then I really couldn't decide what I wanted. And so I kept on waiting and waiting. And then, like, it got to the point that it was, like, late winter, early spring. And I'm like, what's the point of getting a new phone now? Like, they're just going to release a new one in a couple months. And so I've been waiting. And so now there's new phones are out. I'm going to get a new phone probably mid-October. So please be excited. Finally, God.
Are you going to play lots of mobile games? Give us lots of mobile reviews?
I anticipate it, yes. And so many games will come out that I can't. It's like iPhone 4 is not supported.
And especially since that, you know, like the new iPhone 6S or whatever is going to be like the size of your head. I mean, the thing is a mini tablet. It's not a phone anymore.
Well, that's what I want. So, yeah, I'm getting the big one. Getting the big boy.
You got a iPhone 6 in your pocket, or are you just happy to see me, Alex?
I don't know. Oh, man.
I think the answer is both.
Yeah, I think Fliss, you've come across some people with strange phone sizes. Let's just say that you've come across some people.
What does this
with strange
mean?
phones.
Let's not explore that any further.
Let's not explore that any further. But what we're going to explore further is some awesome video game news, a great discussion in our perspectives, and some experimental methods. So let's get into it. The Impact Factor is where I bring my perspectives as a biomedical scientist and combine them with, and usually against, Fliss's social scientist worldview to have great discussions about video games. Let's get right into it, as we always do, with some news and views.
News and Views.
In an academic journal, News and Views collects the best of recent events and findings. Here, Fliss and I scour through the week in video game news to find the stories with the biggest impact. So, Fliss, what is your story of impact?
Well, man, there's so much really important stuff, but the thing that makes a big impact for me is a new
Apple
feature.
Pencil.
Yeah, man, your Apple Pencil always makes a big impact on me, Alex.
Oh, God. Not this line of discussion again. We're not talking about the gospel of impacting anymore.
I'm pretty sure the gospel of impacting never goes away.
Oh, gosh. It's a part of all of us. Anyway, get on with your story.
You have to dig deep inside yourself to...
Oh, God, no!
All right, so for me, there's a new HOTS patch coming. It's going to introduce an abusive chat reporting option. So again, HOTS, Heroes of the Storm. It's a MOBA computer game. Has a notoriously bad community in general. Those kinds of games for abuse, for being real jerks in the chat, for... I mean, just in general, not being a friendly environment for new people to come play at. And Blizzard is all about bringing in new people. I mean, HOTS is trimmed down and shined up to be, as simple and easy and attractive a MOBA as possible. And now it seems like they're trying to trim down and shine up the community of players. And that makes a lot of sense. I like this reporting option. It kind of makes it simpler to kind of basically say, like, well, this person was, undermining team morale or was good gaming at 5 minutes into the game, and to just say that, expand your options for trying to explain why someone was being detrimental to the team or to your enjoyment of the game. A lot of people are really concerned about it because the penalty is that players who are flagged frequently will be silenced, which is to say that they will have very limited ping options or standard command options, and will not be allowed to type anything into the chat, so no custom chat for them. You've written about this on the Impact Factor, about how beautiful the ping commands are all by themselves. I mean, I personally wouldn't even mind eliminating the custom chat altogether and stay only with pings, so I don't think that this is too harsh a penalty.
No, I really don't think it's too great of a loss. Yeah, so on the impactfactor.blogspot.com, I wrote a piece about it.
I wish you guys could see his face.
He's a used car salesman here.
I need to get a photo of that and tweet that. Like, make that face again so I can screenshot it here. Like, you just nailed the Jackie Chan meme. Like, you killed it, man. That was beautiful.
Oh man. Well, yeah. So I mean, my writing's pretty good. Basically, I argue though that nonverbal communication is really finding a home in a lot of these games, and you remove toxicity, which is, I think, so persistent and so nefarious in the gaming community, at least the gaming online community, and relates to another story we talked about here in the Impact Factor, right, where you see that there are very few women who play online games. But yeah, I think HOTS is a very elegant system of pinging, and I think for the most part, the strategy is pretty clear enough that pinging can just express interest in a way that, typing doesn't really facilitate all that much better. I mean, the one thing that typing does that they might need to work on a ping for, like if the system, has as big an effect as you think it might, Fliss, is to kind of indicate which lane you want to go in, because there's still, like, even if you ping a lane, it's not exactly clear that's what you want to do. But yeah, I mean, I'd say at least 40% of the time, 40, maybe 30 at like most minimum, like the chat is toxic. Upwards of, like whole games chat will be toxic, and so I don't think you're losing anything of any huge value to silence it.
Yeah, I think what really took me off guard the first time I really realized that the chat was probably not necessary was when we were playing online, and I think I just didn't go to a lane or something that somebody wanted to, and they just told me to kill myself. And I was just like, it just escalated so quickly.
They wanted you to suicide in the game. That's all they were saying.
Yeah, I'm sure. I want to think well of them. I'm sure that's what they were telling me to do. But it could be misconstrued.
Because it's gonna confuse the enemy, right? They're gonna confuse the opponent, and then they're gonna be like, "Oh my god, this team is a bunch of noobs." And then he wants you to just like steamroll after that.
Yeah, they're gonna get overconfident. They're gonna just be like, "Oh man, one of the players is griefing. We've got this game."
I know, got overconfident, get that greed, and then bam,
exactly, punch him
right to the core. Me go core.
Me go core.
Well, that's the announcement of a Rexar coming here.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Here's the storm.
The vastly not overpowered Rexar.
He's probably not.
No, I mean, I think he's actually not overpowered. Unlike Hunter and Hearthstone.
Oh, that class is not overpowered.
Oh, it is overpowered. Don't even lie.
Quit your whining. You and the rest of the internet gotta whine.
Overpowered. I saw your stream. I've seen your stream. I see you're just like Paladin, lose, Priest. You don't even play Priest. Like, you know why you don't play Priest? Because you're just like, oh, I think I'm gonna get a win. Time to play Hunter.
Priest doesn't have the tools to compete in the meta right now. I mean, the Dragon Priest is good, but that's it.
I'm just saying.
We're getting off hand here. So, yeah, no, it's cool that this is an escalating penalty for Heroes of the Storm. So, like, the first penalty is 24 hours, and then it's doubled every time after that. So you can imagine that, you know, the first time it's kind of a slap on the wrist, because 24 hours, whatever, that's not, like, a big deal. But the more that you violate it, the more this becomes increasing penalty to the point that your communication is significantly and noticeably hobbled.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a work in progress. I think that they're going to have to monitor it closely and decide what to do. But I think it's an interesting idea, and I think it's a step in the right direction.
And I don't want to glaze over the false flag problem, too, because that could be a serious concern. Because to kind of make sure that false flags aren't negatively impacting people, right? You would imagine they need either a very well-designed bot or a lot of human support to go through the text log of the game where the report happened to see, you know, what's right, what's a real flag and what's a false flag, and that's I can't even imagine the amount of work for that.
That also sounds like a terrible job.
Well, this guy told them to kill themselves. All right, that's real. Let's scroll through all this. So they're just talking.
Oh yeah, this guy didn't push when this player wanted to. That's a false flag. Oh
yeah, right.
This one told them all to go find a large bleep and bleep themselves. So yep, nope, that's a real flag. Next one. God, that just right. I would not want to do that job. That guy deserves a big Christmas bonus.
Yeah, she probably does.
Or non-denominational winter bonus.
Non-denominational. The Festivus bonus.
Yeah, hey, actually, though, we're jumping way off topic here, but I saw on Twitter that you're really excited about a Krampus movie.
Oh, yes. Speaking of non-denominational winter holiday, oh, man, Krampus. This came out of, I think it was Fan Expo Canada or something. This is way off topic, folks, but we don't care. That's what we do in the Impact.
We do what we want.
So I think his name is Michael Dougherty, Brian Dougherty. I don't know his name. Anyway, the director of this new Krampus movie, which I'll get to, directed this, one of my favorite kind of Halloween/horror movies of all time, Trick or Treat. It was one of those movies I saw on Netflix back in college. I was like, this can't, Trick or Treat. That seems like it's not going to be that good. It's just like some weird looking like kid with like a jack-o'-lantern head. I'm like, okay, well, whatever. But it's college and it's Netflix, so you watch everything.
Yep.
You really do.
Yep.
And then I don't know if I've ever talked about this on podcast. I'm a huge fan of horror. I love the horror genre. I guess I have.
Yeah, you have because you are to horror as I am to romantic comedies.
Yeah, exactly. I love horror movies. I'm so excited. Something special might be coming out of the Impact Factor for October.
Ooh, please be excited.
So please be excited for that. But yeah, so I love it. So I watched it, and it is so perfect. It's a perfect Halloween movie. It has the right amount of scares and fun, and comedy and like terror and just like sense of the holiday that I think is like really perfect. And so I've been excited. He said that he was going to work on Trick or Treat 2, but then that never happened. But then he announced, the director announced that he was going to work on this Krampus, so this dark, this horror comedy movie about some evil Christmas monster that kills kids who are bad.
Yeah, there's a lot of different cultures. Gonna put my social scientist hat on here.
Oh, God. Yeah.
There's a lot of different cultures that have kind of an anti-clause, if you will, a demon or not necessarily evil, but a spirit to punish the wicked for Christmas.
Man, you're really Krampusing my style here by cutting him like that.
Yeah, well, at least you're not up a chimney without a sweep.
God. Yeah, so the movie looks awesome. They just released some set photos. It's coming out this winter. I'm going to go see it in theaters for sure.
It really, really topical for me when I saw your tweet, because I was just like, oh man, that sounds great, because I just watched a Supernatural episode that touched on Krampus, so I was very excited. I was just like, oh, excellent. And, the spoilers, I mean, it's like season
Spoilers for some
from season 3 of Supernatural. Spoilers.
Oh,
like, it's not Krampus in the episode, so like I'm excited to actually see what they'll do with Krampus in a movie. And of course, I mean, it's even better for me because I get to filter it through you. Like, so if it sucks, I won't even have to watch it.
I doubt it'll suck. Yeah, we're living in a golden age of horror right now. We're getting a lot of really good stuff. Like, if you haven't seen It Follows and you have any interest in horror movies at all, you should do that, like, right now. It Follows is so good. The music by Disaster Piece alone is like, ugh. God.
Yeah, and to take us back to video games, Until Dawn is the most watched game on Twitch right now.
It is, yeah. Most watched and most discussed game, which is crazy because Metal Gear Solid 5 came out, like, the week after it. So yeah, I'm really happy for Until Dawn. Reviews have been very positive about it. It's one of those games that really could have been anywhere on the spectrum of the reviews, because it was originally supposed to be a PS3 move game, and then transitioned to only being a PS3 game, and now it's only a PS4 game, and they've kind of gone through different development cycles and ideas for what they wanted the game to be. And everyone seems to love it. So,
well, it seems like the ideal game for Twitch. We'll talk more about Twitch later, but it's a game that really benefits from a shared experience.
Absolutely. And it's a game I'm going to play through with Justine. I'm not going to stream it, though. Sorry. For a game like that where it's all just about the story, streaming it on Twitch kind of ruins that story experience for me.
No, man. You gotta go with her and turn off all the lights and play it until dawn.
God, me and the puns.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to make as many as possible this episode. I think that's gonna be a thing.
Sure.
So please be excited.
The champion.
Don't even try. Don't even try. You don't have it. You don't have it. You don't have the skill.
Oh, I've got the skill. I've got the gift. But you know what I do have is my most impactful story of the week, and that comes out of the same event that brought us the $99 pencil. That's from the Apple event. So there was an event in San Francisco yesterday, or for when we're recording this, or Wednesday, whenever you're listening to this, Wednesday the 9th. And Apple talked about its new product line. They have this every September. They go through what their newest stuff is. But before the event, a lot of news was coming out. There was a lot of talking pieces about the Apple TV, because for a long time, analysts and people in the industry and investors have speculated that Apple is going to, at some point, want to compete with the home console space for gaming. So much of the gaming is done on smartphones and tablets now, and a lot of those smartphones and tablets that people are doing this on are Apple products. And so Apple seems poised to really create a compelling set-top box with their Apple TV, which a lot of people like anyway, because it's kind of, it serves a lot of the same functions that consoles do anyway. Like, you have your Netflix, you have your Hulu, you have your apps, you have your web browsing, you have your whatever else. And so Apple TV came out on stage, but honestly, there's every year there's like, oh, this is the year Apple kills the PS4 and the Xbox One and the Wii U, and there's a ton of that this year. But we didn't really just see anything of any real substantial value. It really spent only maybe 10 minutes of a 2-hour show talking about games talk. So, Fliss, I don't know if you got to see the presentation, but I don't know, what were your initial reactions to that?
I was thoroughly unimpressed. First of all, I don't have any confidence in Apple to be able to make any kind of foray into the console space. They can't make a good gaming PC. Why should I believe that they can make a good console? But even beyond those biases, it seemed like it was suffering from a lot of the same problems as other kind of console-esque startups have had, which is just that, this is just a way of moving mobile games to your TV. And that doesn't get me excited. Flappy Bird on my TV is no more exciting. It's probably, in fact, less exciting than Flappy Bird on my phone.
Yeah. So what they did talk about, they only showed off 2 games at the show, which is they showed off 2 for the Apple TV specifically, so we'll just talk about those. Crossy Road, which is a game we mentioned briefly last time. Developer Hipster Whale recently did Pac-Man 256, which I was underwhelmed by. But I enjoyed Crossy Road. But again, Crossy Road I enjoyed in the context of a, quick on-the-go. It felt like a productive, or at least interesting way to waste 5 minutes while you're sitting on the toilet or on a plane or waiting to be seen at the doctor's office. They announced that Crossy Road is going to work on Apple TV, and that there's going to be some sort of competitive multiplayer kind of thing. Like the two people, basically you just put another person on the screen and they can like run into each other and stuff. It seems goofy, but again, I don't know if it'll be goofier for more than 5 or 10 minutes. And then at that point, like, why even play it on your TV?
This is definitely what I thought about when I saw what they were doing in the Crossy Road. I thought I would just play Rocket League.
Yeah, just play something more compelling. And another game comes from Harmonix. So these is the people behind Rock Band, Amplitude, who's coming out there. So they're big about rhythm games. They announced this game, Beat Sports. To which I gotta say, we beat sports now? We beat sports?
I'm just saying, Beat Sports sounds like a porno.
Ew, gross. My mind never went there. I just always said it sounds like esports, and then the fighting game community, we beat sports now, you know? No, but right in the gutter. Right in the freaking gutter.
Some things don't change.
No, they never change. But it's this weird hybrid of sports/music game. To quote the developer, it combines the fun of hitting balls with the fun of hitting notes.
That doesn't sound like a porno to you?
God. A bad one. I don't know what these notes are here.
You mean you don't hit a high note, Alex?
No, man, no falsetto for me. I don't know how good that falsetto was. It's pretty early in the morning. So yeah, it's combined sports and music. Like they had one where it's like baseballs were being thrown at you, and your person was hitting the baseballs at like this monster to defeat it. There's multiplayer. The aesthetic is kind of cute. But one big issue with this game, other than it looks like a game that came straight out of 2006, in terms of like not necessarily just the graphics, but like kind of the feel and the features of the game, is that the problem with this in any game is that Apple didn't officially brand or talk about or announce a controller. And I think a lot of the issue, I know a lot of the issue I have with smartphone games is that because of the touch control scheme, and like the touch and the motion-based control scheme, like you're shaking your phone around, you can't create the same kind of experiences that you can with a controller. Because you just need buttons for some games. And like some games do not work on the phone because of the control scheme. And so I think that a controller needs to come before games. So some people are like, well, there's no controller for the new Apple TV because there's no games that would support a controller. But then I would argue the counter that you need a controller to exist before people even care about bringing games that would utilize a controller into it. And so kind of at the end of the conference and a couple hours after, I'm like, well, this is a complete bust. But then Apple started promoting on their site for this not an official Apple TV controller, but there is one that they're kind of promoting, the SteelSeries Nimbus Apple TV controller. It looks like this weird, it looks like pretty much just you took a PS4 controller and Xbox One controller and fused them together. So this is, a third-party controller, but they're kind of promoting it with the Apple TV. So, again, though, because it's not an official Apple logo, Apple controller or something, I don't think it's going to succeed, and you're not going to have enough people who have these for developers to care about making games for the Apple TV that actually require a controller.
What would you call an actual Apple controller? Because it can't be a controller. You have to call it something else, right? Just like the Apple Pencil. What is it?
The iPad is already taken.
Yeah, so what are you going to call it? The iPlay?
The Boomerang.
The Boomerang. All right, that's solid.
They're usually curved like that.
Yeah, I see it.
Man, I need to work in marketing.
Yeah, you do. All right, I saw the SteelSeries, the Nimbus here. It looks like the cross of a PlayStation controller and an Xbox controller. A
PlayStation controller and Xbox controller were starred in Beat Sports together.
Yep.
Had a baby.
They had a love child. They beat those sports.
No.
But no, controllers are so important. I don't like touch controls. They work really, really well for some games, but for the most part, I think that they're very limiting. And I'm very attached to controllers. I really like comfortable controllers. I'm all about that form factor.
PS4 controller, best controller of all time.
Yeah, it is. For me, the GameCube controller was the best controller of all time for a long, long time. And the moment at Tokyo Game Show, before the PS4 came out, when I held the DualShock 4, I had to stop because it was a controller more comfortable than the GameCube controller. And it still amazes me. I honestly, when I'm just watching TV, I sometimes just hold my controller. It feels so nice in my hands. It's really embarrassing, but totally true.
God. Oh man, this line is getting me deep here. You just hold your controller in your hands. You play with the sticks.
But I'm not playing Beat Sports, so it's okay.
I have played Beat Sports. Yeah, well, there's no controller support yet. Certainly not PS4 controller support.
Oh, I've got a controller for Beat Sports.
So it just seems like Apple has a missed opportunity here, because I'm not saying that I would have been excited about an Apple TV in the game space, but I think more options and more competition and more diversity is always a good thing, because say some developers can't get their games onto the PS4 or an Xbox One or a Wii U, but maybe they could get their game onto the Apple TV, and if that were a thriving ecosystem, that is only good for developers and gamers and stuff. And Apple has been poised. I agree with an analyst. Apple has been poised for years now to make a serious claim in the game space. But it seems kind of like they're going the way of Amazon, where they kind of want to do stuff, but then they're not going all in enough to actually care. So the one thing, though, to consider, though, is that the Apple TV is priced competitively. You know, when Apple has a reasonable price on something, they really want it to get into people's hands. They really want to take up that market share. Like, right, because the iPad Pro, they realize people are going to buy that even though it's $800. But this Apple TV is $150. So that's like half the price, or it's less than half the price of all of, like, the PS4 and Xbox One, and that's half the price of the Wii U. And it seems like, if they advertise this right, or if they keep pushing, this could be the go-to home console for, non-gamer parents with small children. Because it's the same, stupid games they play on the iPad and the iPhone, but now you can put them up on the TV and the kid will be entertained. Because you can use a lot of these games you can use your phone as a controller. The Apple TV controller has like a touch thing and has motion, so you can use that too. And so I think they're still not in a bad place, and Apple must care about the space, because I think that $150 price point really proves it. They do care, but they just didn't go far enough, I don't think.
Yeah, I think the only console that this threatens is the Wii U, and the Wii U is already dead. So
yeah.
The only people sweating this are the people designing the NX.
It's like there's some new elk coming up to fight for the female deer, and it's just like the one elk is like on the ground, the ribs are exposed and flies are coming out of it, guts are kind of laying there already.
There you go, folks. The impact factor: sex and violence.
Well, we care about the stuff that matters.
That's true. Speaking of what matters, you let me get away with without giving a one-sentence summary of why the new hotspot
sure
is
did.
important. So
Whoops.
I'm going to take
put those in the show
and
notes.
Run with it, but you're not getting out of that. Tell me why Apple TV is important.
All right, let's put a little a marker in the show notes here. Don't forget, Apple TV was poised to take advantage of a console niche, but underwhelming accessories and games leave the door open. Sure.
Oh, that was pretty good for on the fly.
Yeah. Thanks. Got that.
That's all right.
Okay. Go to your next story.
All right. So this is a really small story. I think it follows nicely.
This is a really small story.
You okay over there?
I'm not gonna let that voice crack go. I'm not gonna let that voice crack go.
I can't do the belch here though, so we can get our Rick and Morty going again. Can you help pick me up there?
I don't know what you're talking about here.
It's just a really small story. Gosh.
All right, enough of the Rick and Morty.
Yep.
I gotta work on it. I need to record myself doing it. Though listening, gonna inside baseball here. I do listen to our episodes because somebody's got to, right?
Because he's a raging narcissist.
Yeah, I mean that's true.
Set the pot to the kettle.
Sometimes at work, I'll watch my own Let's Plays. I'll be like, man, this guy, he knows what he's doing.
It's okay. I mean, I put on our podcast before I go to sleep at night because I like lulling myself to sleep.
Wait, I don't know if that's a very resounding advertisement for the podcast. Man, I listen to this podcast to go to sleep. There's nothing quite like the impact factor to put you to sleep. The impact factor, it's like melatonin.
That was good. I like that.
It resets your circadian rhythm,
Yeah, I mean, the best response I have is, it's like Sociology 203. And put you right to sleep.
All right, so go with the small story here.
Yeah, all right. So, but I think it follows nicely, this story, after our discussion of Apple TV and trying to get places for developers to put out their games, because the place that developers used to be able to put out their games was the Xbox Live Indie Games Marketplace. And they can still do that, but only for a very limited time. Microsoft has announced that they're ending the indie games marketplace in 2017. And content posting restrictions are starting right now. And from September of next year, there will be no new content, right? So you got restrictions starting now, no new content in September of next year, and by the time we get to 2017, it's all going to go away. The Xbox Live Indie Games Marketplace never really took off the way Microsoft wanted it to, but it did do a lot of good for a lot of people, and a lot of devs got their start there. And so there's a lot of posts, and a couple of them are very moving, coming up right now from devs, kind of remembering putting up on the Indie Games Marketplace. So, Alex, why was the Marketplace so important initially?
We have a number of reasons. We had a long time of this stigma that downloadable games were lesser than retail games, right? They used to, for Game of the Year awards, we used to exist in a space where there was the Game of the Year and then there was the digital Game of the Year or the downloadable Game of the Year. They were also seen as inferior. And then a lot of it was, as these online marketplaces emerged, discoverability was and still is a huge issue, not due to the sheer number of releases, but just because people were still discovering how their users wanted to discover content. So I think the Xbox Live Indie Games Marketplace was really important because it spotlighted at a very kind of embryonic time in the indie scene, and at least for console consumers. It really highlighted these new releases and these devs in a substantial way that people could find. I think games like Super Meat Boy and Castle Crashers are some of the biggest ones that sure they had their online following because both kind of stemmed from some people who are on Newgrounds, which is a Flash portal site that used to be much bigger. But I know I spent a lot of time on Newgrounds, like in middle school and high school.
Yeah, and a lot of the devs who've been praising it praised the kit, the way that the marketplace was set up to not only let you promote your game, let you get your game exposed and out there, but to actually help you make your game, for the Xbox, to be able to put together a game that you could kind of build in your garage with the tools given to you by Microsoft, and then put that game out on a major console. So it was, I think, really a precursor to the kind of renaissance I think that we're getting right now on the PS4, actually, of small titles built in very easy-to-use, interesting engines that are cheap for gamers and let smaller developers put great games out there.
Yeah, no. So I think while this is sad news that this is going, I think it's reflective of the time. The one big downside of this is I think discoverability is at an all-time low for games, and I think even just keeping the indie games marketplace afloat would just help for some titles rising through the sea of releases to be discovered. But then again, it's certainly just reflective of like where we're in the game space. I mean, so many indie games release, it's hard to know which ones that. It's not like, oh, we're spotlighting 3 indie games this week because there was only 3 indie games that came out this week, right? You're getting 10, 12 a week.
Yeah. There was definitely a time where a game like Castle Crashers was huge news.
It's released into a void.
Yeah.
It's
and now you've just got so many great little games coming out.
And then as well, I think people are more cognizant of indies, so you don't need, for the ones that people want to be big, most people will already have known about them through Twitter, YouTube, whatever, Reddit. Kickstarter, exactly. And then, I think, this tool set, for this indie games marketplace, almost all of, the big name, development software now is free to use. And so I think, a lot of that problem's been solved too. So it's sad to see it go. It did create and help, create a titans in this independent development scene. But, I think people will move forward with this.
Yeah, and, here at the Impact Factor, we're really big proponents of preserving gaming history. And I think that it's important to mark the passing of the games marketplace like this because it is important. Like you said, it came at this embryonic moment, this formative stage in the digital gaming world. And I think that's important to remember and important to kind of archive. And I think that's why it's so good that there are so many kind of memorials being put up for it, that people are very aware of what it meant.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let me do 3 quick hits here, and then we'll wrap up news and views.
You gotta let me give my one sentence
Oh
summary.
my gosh, yeah, that's right. Oh my gosh. This guy, I invented this rule, and now it's coming back to bite me in the butt.
Pretty sure I invented this rule.
Oh, I invented this rule. Like, you made this?
Yeah, I made this.
I made
this.
Yeah,
Go
right.
back
right.
and listen to the archives. Not at a time when you're sleepy, because I'll my dulcet tones will lull you right off. But
Dulce de leche voice.
Yeah, just go listen, and you'll hear
God.
exactly how right I am. He's out, folks.
Right,
I'll be doing the podcast solo for the rest of the night. I understand if you need to turn it off now.
They're already gone.
No.
All right, give them a summary.
All right. Ahem. The ending of the Xbox Live Indie Games Marketplace brings a sad end to a beautiful and important time in gaming history.
All right, there we go. Well done. So my 3 quick hits here before we wrap this up. We're experimenting with the shorter news and views. Again, anyone, let us know what you do or don't like about how we're kind of tweaking with the formula here. We're always interested to know. We'll tell you again at the end, but that's impactfactorpodcast@gmail.com. So my 3 quick hits. Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain. One of the biggest games of the year, one of the biggest games of September. It's been out for about a week. It's already sold 3 million units, so that's great. Those are pretty great sales figures, especially for a game that used to be much more niche. But still, it's not a success yet. According to analysts, it needs to sell between 5 and 6 million units to break even on its development budget. I would imagine that it would make that because the game is big. I think it's going to only gain momentum as we go into the holiday season. But that's kind of crazy. They need to sell that many units to break even. Like something would screw with that development.
In case you didn't think that video games cost a lot of money to make.
Yeah. So that's cool. That's cool. I almost certainly will pick it up. I'm not sure if I'll pick it up by the end of the year. I hope to, but we'll see. We'll see. One of my most impactful, but there's really no news there, is that Atlas, publisher of Japanese games extraordinaire, announced that they're creating a special Persona stage show at the Tokyo Game Show. So they're giving Persona a stage spotlight on September 19th during the Tokyo Game Show. Again, we've talked about this on the podcast. The Tokyo Game Show is kind of small and not as big, but you still do get relatively big developments about Japanese games. And I can't think of many bigger Japanese console games than Persona. And so it seems weird to have this big stage show to talk about Persona 4 Dancing All Night, because that came out back in like June in Japan. And Persona 5, every single time we've had an interview with Atlas or anyone associated, they still claim we agree this is a 2015 game for Japan and North America. So maybe we'll get a release date. Maybe.
Sounds like a lot of wishful thinking, but
no, I want it. I want to release it. Even if it's not a 2015 release date, I want to know. I want to know when I can have Persona 5 in my hands. I gotta know. But according to fans, I didn't know this because I am a very new fan to the franchise. It was the same way with both Persona 3 and Persona 4 when they came out. Like the game was announced, and then there was long span of nothing. No one would ever talk about the game. No trailers, no gameplay, no nothing. And then all of a sudden, you'd have a huge info dump, and then the game would come out 2 months later. I think part of it because they want to keep the kind of mystery and the allure of like what's happening and the in the game and the characters in the game. And the longer that it's out, the more you know. Like I think maybe they have in their mind, the more you know, the less excited you are to play. And so it still could happen. They still could have a big like showing a new trailer at Tokyo Game Show and then announce that it's coming out like in December or something. And that'd be cool. So we'll see. And then the last quick hit is that we've got some unexpected news from the Kingdom Hearts franchise.
What?
Yeah, right? This is not news I expected to talk about. So people, I think GAF users were scouring LinkedIn for people who worked at Square Enix, and they found this guy. They found this guy's LinkedIn posting who said that he's been working for 10 plus months on his game called Kingdom Hearts 2.9.
What could that be?
Oh well, we're not even going to focus on how dumb the Kingdom Hearts naming of their games is, but nobody knows what it is. Some suspect that it's like they did release this Kingdom Hearts 1.5 and 2.5 HD remixes for the PS3, which are basically these kind of collections of older Kingdom Hearts games remastered for the PS3. Some suspect that this is some sort of weird combination of all of those put together and released on the PS4 and Xbox One. Oh, I should say this Kingdom Hearts 2.9, if true, was said to be a PS4 or Xbox One title.
I would buy that so fast.
But then Tetsuya Nomura has gone on record saying that they're not porting like the older Kingdom Hearts games to PS4 or Xbox One. So who knows? Maybe this is like some kind of small little prequel game, because a lot of games are doing that now to like lead people up and get people excited about the new release. They release like a smaller title, but that kind of has some of the elements. Like this could be the Metal Gear Solid Ground Zeroes to Metal Gear Solid 5 this could be Kingdom Hearts 2.9 could be the Ground Zeroes to Kingdom Hearts 3's Phantom Pain. It's kind of a bite-sized experience that gets you kind of into the idea of the world and the mechanics.
I would rather just be HD remixes for the PS4, because I would buy that so fast. So fast.
Oh my god. Yeah,
so
right.
fast.
You're gonna have time to play through 6 Kingdom Hearts games?
I'll make time.
Yeah, right, sure.
I'll stream it.
Sure. Alright, fair enough. And then also on the same employees listing, it said that they're working on Kingdom Hearts 3, and they talked about what sounded like a new mode that we hadn't heard about, but that mode looks to be potentially a multiplayer mode? Maybe?
What would that even look like?
I don't know. I mean, I could see co-op, I could see a battle, I could see anything. Because there was that Game Boy game, I think, in Chain of Memories, in Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, there was a multiplayer mode. Because I remember I brought my Game Boy and played against Tony in the cafeteria.
Oh, I remember that.
Stupid
I remember that now.
Battle mode.
Oh, wow. That takes me back, man.
So, it could be some sort of competitive mode, too. I'm not super thrilled about multiplayer in Kingdom Hearts. It's not something I've ever wanted to do.
It sounds completely unnecessary.
It's cool if they do it. So those are the quick hits. That's wrapping those things up. Wrap those quick hits is a bunch of franchises that Alex is interested in had news. So that's a summary.
I like that.
Maybe we'll know more. I wanted to spend more time on the Kingdom Hearts 2.9, but really we don't know anything. And everything I've seen ever, it's just people speculating. So, man, 2.9 though, what a dumb title.
I mean, the Kingdom Hearts titles, 1.5, 2.5.
It's not even that. It's 1.5 HD remix.
Right.
Kingdom Hearts 356 over 2 days, or by 2 days.
Oh yeah. No, it's 300. It's 365 over 2.
Oh yeah, 365 over 2 days.
Yeah.
Or Dream Drop Distance. Birth by Sleep.
Oh, Birth by Sleep is the worst. That is the worst title. Of all the titles, that is the worst of them.
Recoded. R-E-coded.
I think it would be fun to come up with, like fake Kingdom Hearts style names for the Impact Factor. Like, the Impact Factor, re-recorded.
Re-recorded. This is the Impact Factor 18.4.
Over 2.
By Sleep.
Yeah, the Impact Factor
man.
by... Hey, topical, the Impact Factor to Sleep.
The Impact Factor by Sleep. Oh, man. So we love to hear from the community news items you all thought had the biggest impact. So please shoot us an email at impactfactorpodcast@gmail.com. Let us know the stories that we missed that you wanted us to talk about. If you submit a story before our recording session, we'll talk about it. And then let us know, too, if you like that we're trying to keep this a little bit trimmer. But I guess we're looking to be the same length as always. So now it's time to put things in perspective.
Perspectives.
Perspectives is part of the show, well, when any number of things can happen. In academia, it's when investigators share their opinions with the community at large. Here, it's a revolving section that, gosh dang it, we're going to make revolve, where we experiment with what's worth discussing. So let us get started today. This is our special section. This is what makes the Impact Factor, the Impact Factor, Factor.
Aside from Alex's terrible echoes and other voiceover effects, that's right. This is the best part of the Impact Factor. This is perspectives. This is what we live for. This is the part of the show where we get to go at each other or work together to build something cool. And the past 2 weeks, we've been indulging in thesis defense, a section where we go head-to-head in an adversarial debate. This week we are moving on to a more constructive sort of discussion after our past two debates kind of ended in victory for the attackers. We had an excellent comment from Tetris for Me thrown at us in which
via Twitter, via the Twitter space.
Yeah, thanks for tweeting at us, saying that he felt that 2 weeks ago when Alex was defending, he was defeated, and last week when I was defending, I suffered, a very, very narrow.
Oh no, it's
loss.
a devastating loss.
Narrow, but that's not. We're not here to debate how, just by the skin of his teeth, Alex managed to beat me last week. We're here to build something new. Oh, Alex, tell us, what are we breaking out for brand new perspectives?
All right, I crack my neck here. I put the work in. We've got another brand new type of perspectives for you all. Last 2 weeks, there's thesis defense. Before that, it was a section we call review board. Well, we're retroactively calling it review board. But this week, it's time for me to introduce another brand new type of perspectives. Future directions. Ooh. In science, knowing what's coming on the horizon is as important as knowing what's in the past. You plan for and work towards what will be important in the years to come. Future directions are your next step. So here, Future Directions takes a look at our future as games enthusiasts. This is a broad topic covering anything from upcoming releases to tech and culture. So this week, my topic for Future Directions is for your viewing pleasure, taking a look at the future of watching games.
So Alex, what got you on to looking to the future of us watching games?
Yeah, so this is a subject I think that's increasingly important in the games discussion. But there was a certain thing that happened, last week a little bit, that kind of spurred on my discussion. So to go a little bit further back, we've talked about it on the podcast, the growing success of esport events and the viewership and the sponsor money and kind of the acceptance in the mainstream. And so we saw that with both EVO, which had a huge growth rate. I think it was like 167% growth rate in amount of viewers. They were breaking viewer records, across the board for many of their titles. And then we had the international tournament that we had User Block set us on, our good old pal Thomas on to talk about. And that was just enormous. It was the biggest esport tournament of all time. Had one of the biggest prize pools of any organized event ever. Viewership was in the millions of people,
and they rewarded us with an excellent tournament.
Exactly. And so we've seen that scene growing, but still, there's something inherent, I think, to both of us and a lot of people our age and certainly older that feels kind of off about watching games. This came to a head when we had one of the late-night hosts, Jimmy Kimmel, who had this piece about YouTube gaming. In one of his late-night shows, Jimmy Kimmel kind of went in and ripped into YouTube gaming, like their new streaming service that we've talked about on the podcast, where he's like, who would watch games? This is so goofy. YouTube have this new feature of watching people. You watch people play games, and his joke was, where does it stop there? You could not only watch people play games, but you can watch people watching people play games, and you can watch those people who are watching people who watch people play games, and that was a joke, and whatever. It's standard kind of boring, stupid late night humor, whatever. But then there was this huge pushback from the gaming community, where everyone was mad at Jimmy Kimmel and like, you don't understand, you're old, blah blah. Everyone watches games. This is a huge thing. He riled up the internet. They sent a lot of vitriol and a lot of death threats his way, as unfortunately would be expected of the community. And let's just go from there. So Jimmy Kimmel made fun of watching games for pleasure, and then there's a huge pushback. So let's break down this first thought about the future of watching games.
Yeah, man, so I don't want to dive too deep into why I disagree with a lot of what Kimmel said, but I do want to touch on it very briefly. I mean, obviously, he's a late-night talk show host, and I find very little humor in most late-night talk shows, but I get that he's trying to be funny. He's trying to kind of have a comedic sketch, and he has done funny ones in the past, so I get that he's trying to make a joke out of something. But unfortunately, he kind of lost what I think was a sort of high ground of making a joke when he started digging deeper into this in successive episodes of his show. So he had his initial skit, which was just kind of like, yeah, okay, like, it's clear that he doesn't get it, or that his writers thought this would be a good skit, like, whatever. But then he started posting up the responses he'd gotten, comments he'd gotten from the community. And so not only were these horrifically embarrassing for me as a gamer, as someone who identifies as part of this community, but they were also really discriminatory in the way they were used by Kimmel to kind of weaponize them against gamers. And so, like, first of all, death threats are completely unacceptable. I want to make it absolutely clear that I'm not trying to apologize for or excuse those. They're not acceptable. They're not okay. We need to stop that. We need to get that out of the community. We've harped on that on the Impact Factor before. We'll harp on it again. It's just a bad part of the community that we need to move out and we need to grow up about. But what Kimmel then did, right, by taking these internet comments by pointing to their misspellings or their odd use of language or a lack of punctuation, is he weaponized them to paint a picture of gamers as juvenile and immature and uneducated, and very specifically to try and show, like, look at these gamers, they are overreacting about something that is a children's game. So these are grown people who are acting as children and are now acting childish. So he was playing into all these old, harmful stereotypes about the gaming community. And for me, that's when I kind of lost my like, yeah, well, he's just being a late night talk show host. That's when I started feeling like, all right, now you're actually making a bit of an attack on who I am.
No, certainly there's the infantilization of the game community, and certainly there's drawing those parallels and drawing those correlations that have existed since games have existed. That if you're into games, it brings back a lot of the times when we were first started gaming. That if you're into games, you're somehow you're either a child or you're naive or you're some sort of subsection of the population. And that I think by this discussion of his in the first place and the subsequent response, and really so focusing on this response, I think, again, it's trying to be like, hey, look, we've come a long way, but at the same time, games are still this thing that is not, it doesn't match what I do as Jimmy Kimmel, as a TV entertainer. It's not the same to compare those kind of forms of entertainment.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that it was clear. He made one comparison that I think we'll touch on again later in our discussion here, but that really struck me in his response video, where he said that, watching video games is not the same as watching football. Because you can say, because his big argument was like, why would I watch video games when I could play video games? Well, when then gamers came back and said, why would we watch football when we could play football? And he said that you're still one step removed. Like, you're an extra step removed when you're watching someone play video games, because you're removed from physical activity. And what really bothered me about that is the failure to acknowledge that playing with a controller, that using a controller is a form of physical activity, that those inputs are a skill that has to be refined and used, and that's what makes esports so exciting. And the real difference between like a football game and an esports match is that in a football game, right, like you see a player and they're throwing a ball. Well, the game is the ball and the refs and the rules.
Yep.
It's just
Agreed.
It's just kind of distilled, simplified. If anything, you could argue it's more pure.
Yeah. And not to do too deep a dive in the Jimmy Kimmel thing, because this is just a springboard for
Absolutely.
where we are in our future of watching games. But then one more thing that I would also like to bring up about his thing is he mentioned that in his first argument that watching people play games is like going to a fancy restaurant and then watching someone eat food and not eating food yourself. And I think while I can understand where those parallels are drawn, it's not exactly the same. Because people usually watch people playing games for two reasons. They're either entertaining or they're very good. And so if you wanted to use that analogy there, it'd be like going to a restaurant and either watching Kobayashi competitively eat food, so something that not many other people can do, because he's a pro at eating food and he's very good at what he does. Or it's like going to a dinner with your best friend, your most entertaining friend, someone who you know and you understand, and they're just like talking the whole time, and they're, goofing off and hanging out, and you just don't happen to be hungry. You like food. Certainly you like food. You like looking at food. You enjoy eating food. You eat food all the time, but you're not in that moment feeling like eating food. You're there feeling like hanging out with a friend. And that friend, that super entertaining, that super goofy, that super fun friend you like spending time with, is hungry at the moment. So they're eating, and then you're watching them eat because you like spending time with them.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. Also, he's clearly unaware of the existence of Food Network, because people do watch people
I watch
cook and eat food.
I watch Food Network all the time. That channel is like routinely that's primetime channel surfing channel.
Oh man, hey, I was stuck on a plane, a trans-Pacific flight, and they came up with like a celebrity cook-off show, and I was just like, oh gosh, the only reason I'm watching this is because I can't fall asleep on this flight, and it's the only thing that they're playing, so I'm going to watch it. And it was super entertaining. It was great. I really enjoyed watching those people cook and eat food. It was great. It was really fun. Yeah. They were very entertaining and very talented. I don't know if I can eat food that well.
So just to wrap up this intro here, kind of in the end, the way Jimmy Kimmel ended this is he created a Let's Play with some popular YouTubers, including Markiplier, who's one of those kind of on the bad side of YouTube Let's Players. They kind of scream and act dumb while playing. But, I mean, he's done a lot, and he's kind of grown this scene a lot, certainly, so I respect the work that Markiplier puts in. But then he kind of created this really cringeworthy, really bad Let's Play. And so it kind of does make you question, like, if this is a it both highlights the skill that goes into creating an interesting Let's Play that people watch, but then also puts the state that, watching someone play a game is just like watching them. There are certainly, like, a lot of bad parts of this entertainment as in general. So this brings us to a couple central points that we'll go through one by one. I'm talking and looking at the current state and the future of watching games. So we've talked a little bit about this already, but the first point I have here in the show notes is that from where does Kimmel's attitude stem? So Fliss, if you want to touch on this quickly, then we can move on to the next point. Because provide your social scientist perspective. Where do you think this, watching games is for losers and I don't understand it and it's the other? Where do you think that stems from? Briefly.
Yes, very briefly. I think that, first of all, as a late-night talk show host, Kimmel is in the business of othering. This isn't just something he does to games. It's something that all late-night talk show hosts do. They take something and they say, look at this thing. Isn't it weird? Let's laugh about this. This isn't just an American problem. This is something that they do on talk shows in Japan, which I find especially aggravating because it's often like, look at this foreign country. Aren't they weird because they're not Japanese? But that's a personal gripe.
That's weird. Good old xenophobia.
Like, oh man, they don't use chopsticks here. Dun dun dun. And then they walk into a Chinese restaurant and they're like, oh my god, they're using chopsticks here. Dun dun dun. I really wish I were making this up. Anyway, so there's that. That's part of his job. That's part of what he's doing. It's also that, genuinely, Kimmel's audience is coming from a group that's probably bottoms out around our generation. I don't have any numbers in front of me, but the people who watch Jimmy Kimmel probably, bottom out around 18. And so this is a bracket where a lot of the old attitudes about games, which you touched on earlier, that we encountered growing up, that games are for losers, that games are for people who are maladjusted or people who can't play sports, so they have to play video games. Like, there's something physically wrong with them. There's something wrong with you. You play video games because you cannot function normally. I think that's an attitude that persists. And I don't know whether Kimmel personally holds it or not. I don't want to speak for him.
It's strange, right? Like, he was on the Man Show, right? Wasn't he one of the hosts of... He did something with some sort of, like bro-y manliness thing. Maybe there's Adam Carolla. I don't know. But he's done stuff that, you would think he's not that old. I would think that... Which is also incidentally problematic because it reinforces video games as a place that only men can participate in. Certainly. But I just never saw him as one of those, old like kind of viewpoint people. But yeah, it does suck because again, this doesn't really affect me, and I wasn't mad at him doing the skit because whatever, it's late night. But it does certainly bring up those feelings of like when I was a kid, and to the point where I've internalized them, where it's still hard for me to tell people that I play games, let alone that I watch people play games. You know?
No, yeah, I mean it's definitely still stigmatized. I think that if anything, this business with Kimmel shows that the stigma is alive and well. You just have to listen to the laugh tracks on both of his clips. Anytime he mentions, like, oh my gosh, people are playing video games at, like any kind of adult age, people laugh about it. I mean, it's definitely, it's hurtful. It is. I understand why people are upset about it. I think people are overreacting about it, or perhaps not. Even if I don't want to say they're overreacting, I think that they're taking the high road about it.
They're certainly overreacting.
But yeah, so I think it stems from this old attitudes. It's playing on things that are very prevalent in like 1980s and very early 90s movies.
But it also feels a little bit like an evolution of this classic attitude that all games in any form being in proximity to them is toxic. But I think now that so many people play games, I'm sure Kimmel plays games on his phone, and maybe he even has a console.
He probably plays
Call of Duty. Everyone plays, yeah, exactly. Now that everyone plays games, you have to have that first separation. Well, it's okay that I play games, but watching people play games, that is the weirdos that I don't understand.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought this up. This is something that I've written about on my blog, flissofthenorthstar.blogspot.com. Shameless plug. Where this is the rebuke of the nerd. This is when you go up to someone and you say, "Hey, I like games," and they say, "Hey, I like games," and you're like, "Oh man, did you watch that thing on Twitch?" And they say, "Oh, I'm not that into it." Mm-hmm. It's rebuking you for your enthusiasm. It's calling you out. It's saying, "Oh, I do this, and that's okay because I'm not excited about it." And that's the way Kimmel's playing it off.
All right, wow, we are running long. So now let's get more into the watching of it. So where are we in the timeline? So this is the next one. Where are we in this timeline in the history of watching games? Watching games as entertainment. So obviously a lot of mainstream people still make fun of it. And then even you, Fliss, on the podcast have said that watching games and watching Let's Plays and watching streams, you don't really understand. So just kind of briefly explain your mindset and where do you think we are in the history of watching games? Because you have to imagine at some point they're going to be as accepted as watching anything else. But just kind of touch on that briefly.
Yeah, well, I don't understand watching Let's Plays the same way that I don't understand watching sports commentary shows. In that I usually like to watch something and then form my own opinion of it, kind of, and I don't necessarily like hearing someone else talk about it. So this is just a kind of own personal bias. Like I don't watch late night talk shows, which I would actually group into the same category. I think it's really, really ironic that Kimmel's job is to be an entertaining commentator doing interesting things, which is what the best YouTubers are doing when they play games. The best Let's Play is taking an interesting game and then overlaying an entertaining personality over it. And I think that's great. So I think that's, if anything, it's not a new media form. It's just applying an old entertainment style to games. And I really like that. And certainly since I started streaming, which I only started last week, got to talk about it on the podcast, doing it for myself, I started to realize the way you can connect with people and the community building value of these sites. And I don't want to overestimate that because Twitch chats are notoriously weird and sometimes toxic, but I think that just being with other people while you do it, sharing the experience is very important and very valuable. So to answer your question, lest I stray too far from it, I think in the timeline, I think we're in a period of major transition. I think that this is a fragile time where we are deciding what we want this gaming scene, this scene of watching games, this community of people who watch games to be like.
So you think maybe like 1950s, maybe 1960s TV?
Yeah, I would definitely stick with like 60s TV. Definitely. We're deciding.
Yeah, fair enough. I agree.
We're deciding
I agree.
What's appropriate and what's good.
No, I think we've gotten to a place that Let's Plays have a pretty clear identity of what they usually want to be. You've got kind of your two styles, your yelling, screaming, reactive style, as well as a more analytic style. You've got Twitch streamers that kind of run the gamut of things, and Twitch viewership is huge. I think you have the emergence of esports starting to be watched on a major scale. So I think, this is the start of a boom year, the start of a boom season at least. And so I think we're still getting past like the embryonic kind of fledgling stage and moving more towards a more content-rich and a future that has a clue or at least insights to what its identity should be.
Yeah, I think
to be successful.
I think we're at a point where it's no longer enough to just be like, oh my gosh, we're watching someone play games. That's so cool. It's so cool that games are getting respected like that. We're now at a point where there are so many people doing that, where we have the platforms to do that on, where we're refining it. We're saying, okay, this person does this well, this person doesn't, and so we're really shaping it out.
Yeah. All right. So moving on to the next question. Then I agree with the perspective on the timeline. So what will change mindsets? We could probably do this quickly because the only answer I can think of is time. There are a ton of very talented, very savvy, very hardworking people working in all aspects of having games as watchable entertainment, and so you have to imagine it's just time. But I'd like to hear your thoughts on this too, Fliss.
Yeah, man, I think it's time, and I think that actually we're already getting the change. The people at the top, the people in the positions that matter, are changing. This week we had a piece of news we didn't talk about in News and Views, which is that ESPN is out to hire a designer, an editor, right? Yeah, an
esports editor.
Yeah, an editor. Who needs expert, quote unquote, knowledge on LOL, League of Legends. God, what am I doing here?
Yeah, you're old.
Yeah, on League of Legends.
Yeah, you clearly, you're old league head. You know, you play so much of. I can't even name one champion. You play so much of.
I actually literally cannot name one league champion.
Not me either. Whoops.
Well, we just outed ourselves. But we played Dota 2, which I can read correctly. I mean DOTA 2. That's like GTA, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, gosh. But they need expert knowledge of these MOBAs. They want lots of media experience already. So this is just one example that things are changing at the top. That the purchasing power of gamers is being noticed. The fact that that you can make a lot of money on advertising from this. It's being noticed. So we're getting our piece. It's coming. It's already being carved out. The people who care more about money than they care about stigma, which, I mean, I don't know whether that's a great thing or not, but at the top are making changes that reflect the growing cultural power of gamers.
Yeah, exactly. And it's cool to see that this influence of gamers on entertainment is reflexive as well, right? Because ESPN is also hiring a virtual reality, augmented reality engineer for ESPN content. And so you imagine they're trying to do things with VR or AR sports coverage. And so it's interesting to see the intersection of those two spheres, as how entertainment has obviously been influencing games entertainment, because, especially on the esports side, most people cast games like they're sports commentators. Like, you've got golf commentators for Hearthstone, and you have, your football commentators for stuff like, Dota. Yep. And so, I mean, they're each imitating each other, and I think as they work together to imitate the successes of each other, that's how you're going to find success for both in this new sphere that we're working towards, where watching games as entertainment is as important, or at least nearly as important as TV and sports and movies and whatever else.
Yeah, if anything else, I just think that what gamers are craving is respect. And that's why I think the reaction against Kimmel was so strong. Because we've been pushed down for so long. We've been told that this isn't legitimate. And so we're getting legitimacy, and we're worried that it could be taken away. And I don't think it will be. Just because of the size of the movement, because of the number of people watching these streams, because of the way gamers are supporting esports with their money. I don't think that it's going to get taken away, but there is that worry, and I think that that's where the overreaction to Kimmel's stuff comes from.
And I think a lot of times for many different kinds of things, both in social science as well as biomedical science as well as anything else, everyone's like, oh, just wait for the old people to die off and things will change. And that's usually not true. Like, if we're talking about systemic kind of viewpoints and mindsets, those don't usually change because parents pass those down onto kids. But I think in entertainment, that kind of transcends a lot of the rules of social inheritance. I think because you have so much media, and media consumption really defines a lot of living in this century, in this millennium, I think there are going to be so many people who play games, and just everything you do has a game attached to it. They're gamifying education. You have game-like systems in businesses, and then obviously you have constant access to games either on your phone, or your tablet, or your computer, or the game consoles. And so I think this is a thing that, while time certainly isn't going to erase a lot of these socially ingrained ideas, I think time will erase this idea, but only because it's everyone is going to be ensconced in gaming in some way. I mean, my grandmother, who, you know, isn't necessarily against games, but is certainly not like a gamer and doesn't really understand games. The other day I got a Facebook invitation from her to play Candy Crush Soda Saga. So, like, she's playing games, and that's, like, a big game. Like, that's a huge, an important game for the mobile space. I'm not saying it's a great game. It's not, but... So, like, everyone plays games. Right? Everyone plays games.
Yeah, I mean, it blew my mind when I walked into a store and saw the toddler attachments to protect iPads. And then that was confirmed when we saw our friend Tony's son playing on an iPad. I mean, we've got kids basically being with games from the cradle. And that's awesome. It's totally cool.
For our generation, we didn't get games really until you could work a keyboard or work a controller. You know, like 4 or 5. You know, you have to be a certain age to be able to have that kind of manual dexterity. But a lot of these games where you just poke and swipe, like, you can do that like 2.
Yeah, it won't be long before the square and triangle shaped blocks are gone, and you have to move them to the correct shapes on your iPad.
Yeah, exactly.
Baby's first
iPad. And then to wrap up this conversation, this last big point here, how do we imagine that the landscape of video game content and this video game viewing content is going to change and be reflective of the growing community of the people who watch gameplay? So one of the things I first want to bring up is, are we forever going to be stuck in Let's Play land? TM, Impact Factor TM. Let's Plays are huge, and we're talking about Let's Plays on YouTube or Let's Plays, essentially Twitch streaming, a lot of that is Let's Play too, people playing the game. Because just for instance, this past week, the first YouTube channel to ever get 10 billion views is, I'm sure none of you are surprised, PewDiePie. PewDiePie hit 10 billion views on their YouTube account. That is huge. So is this the form of content that's gonna be dominant in the game's watching space?
No. I'm gonna go on record. No. I don't think Let's Plays are gonna be forever dominant, because I don't think that we can even imagine now what the dominant form of gameplay is going to be, or games watching media is going to be. Could we have imagined Twitch when we were in middle school? Could we have imagined any of this? I mean, how amazing would it be to be able to have, you know, more, you know, kind of intimate, if you will, Let's Plays, or to have the internet connectivity of being able to do multiplayer Let's Plays.
Intimate Let's Plays.
Yeah, and I think the Let's Play, I mean, it's like Lucy. I'm going to spit wildly into your biomedical sciences here. It's just an ancestor.
Oh, okay. I'm like, Lucy, I love Lucy. All right. Australopithecus.
See you.
Afarensis.
You lost me after the 3rd syllable.
All right. Well, no scientific name. I can see. Yeah, it's certainly a precursor. It seems it's, as someone who has now created Let's Plays, it is a pretty minimal form of content to make. You essentially just play a game and talk.
Yeah, I also want to distinguish between Twitch Let's Plays and YouTube Let's Plays.
They are different. For sure they are different. They're very different beasts.
A Twitch Let's Play is very much an interactive experience with your audience. It's more a performance, like a live performance, than a taped and recorded video.
True. You get a lot more persona in the YouTube space, where you can take on that moniker and you can put on that mask of the clown, or take on that mask of someone who is always angry. You can put on that mask of someone who's, you know, very analytical or something.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. So
I agree.
I think that there's going to be more diversity. I think that there's going to be more coming, and I also think that honestly, esports are going to overtake Let's Plays before we know it.
Okay, so speaking of new forms of content, yeah, we've got a lot of different kinds of content emerging. And one of the biggest ones that has emerged in 2015 are these sports radio-like morning talk shows, or these gaming talk shows. We've seen those as both kind of like a late-night show, as well as these morning sports talk shows. Any kind of show on TV that we've seen where people discuss news or discuss topics like The View or, any kind of sports radio show has been co-opted. And I think one of the first ones that I knew about was Colin and Greg Live as a part of the Kind of Funny, kind of entertainment network. They just sit down every morning and, like sports radio, talk about the news and give their perspectives. And then this has really emerged into this whole thing now. Twitch has its own little kind of widget for watching gaming talk shows. And so I think we're going to see more of this content too. As there's more content to discuss, both not only just game news, but even talking about the kinds of viewable content. I think we're going to see more of this emerge. And I think Colin Greg Live was honestly a pretty huge first step for the community to kind of realize that this works as a model.
Yeah. I don't have much to say with that because I just agree with you. and I think that those spaces will only continue to grow. And
then to wrap this up, I think also we're starting to see actual more TV programming that is touching on games as entertainment. And this goes back to kind of the reflexive thing. So not only are people going to watch games and Let's Plays and esports and these talk shows, but I think TV is going to be reflective of this growing scene. And so there was this new Nick show that kind of got brought to my attention because we were channel surfing and watched some SpongeBob. And there's an advertisement for this show. Oh gosh, I should have put the title here. About a group of tween girls who start a mega $1 million video game development studio. And it's just basically about a bunch of teen girls who make games, and they have a development studio, and that's like the whole premise of of the show, and that's kind of fascinating to me that they're having a show about making games ostensibly. I mean, I'm sure it's not really going to be about making games. It's just going to be some sort of goofy thing, kind of like the Zoe 101 or whatever that show was, where she was some YouTube star. But it's interesting, at least, to think that games are so important that there's kids already now, through my experiences with my girlfriend who works in education, she talks with a lot of kids, and a lot of them are like, oh, they have a YouTube account, and they're thinking about designing games. But this, I think, is a self-actualization that, this is a lot of what kids are thinking about this. This is a big part of their space. And more kids are going to watch content if they're thinking about, kids grow up watching sports and wanting to be a sports player. A lot of kids are now watching people play games and hey, I want to build games, or I want to play games, or...
Yeah, that's part of what's so exciting about it, right? The name of that show, incidentally, is Game Shakers.
Game Shakers, that is the name of the show.
It's very interesting, right? Because to go back to my football discussion earlier, right? You can't design a new football, but you can design a new esport.
Yep.
And that's very exciting, right? How cool is that? That's awesome.
Agreed.
Really cool. And I totally agree with you. I think that the more that this kind of socially accepted view of games appears in popular media, right? On Nickelodeon, it's just okay that these girls own a gaming company. The more that it will encourage the community to grow and explore new directions.
Exactly. And so, in the end, I think all types of content will win out, and we're looking forward to a very diverse future of entertainment media.
Yeah, and I want to add one thing here because we
wrap it up.
Only got to touch on it briefly, but I enjoyed watching the International so much. Even someone who doesn't play a lot of Dota, so I found it every bit as compelling as a traditional sport. So I think that watching esports, getting esports up there, part of the coverage, no matter what we end up calling them, will give us that beautiful future you were just waxing poetic about.
All right, so that was the end of our first Future Directions. Again, this Future Directions was for your viewing pleasure, taking a look at the future of watching games. So I hope you enjoyed our discussion, our very long discussion. So let's get into our next section. So now that our work is done and logged, let's get into our experimental methods.
Experimental methods.
In experimental methods, Fliss and I talk about the video games we've been playing recently. No papers or pipettes, cells or census here, just our words. We look at what works, what doesn't, and what we're looking forward to testing. So, Fliss, what experiment you've been running?
Well, hey man, you turned me on to a great little game, Grow Home, and that's what I've been playing all week. I've been playing it on Twitch. I've been streaming it. It's been a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying it. It's a wild, wacky game. It's whimsical is kind of the word that gets tossed around a lot, but I feel it's totally applicable to that game.
So give the folks a summary of Grow Home.
All right, so Grow Home is this game where you are this little exploration droid who is dumped onto an alien world to explore it and to grow a plant and to have fun.
Yep, pretty much. You're the botanical utility droid, I believe is his name, Bud.
And he is my bud. He's great. He's hilarious. He moves in a kind of marionette style of walking. He climbs in a somewhat wacky but eventually intuitive and practically reflexive control scheme. And the game it's so much about making your own fun, in that it gives you all these tools, all these things to play with, and then says, go play. It is like the ultimate it's what I would imagine in a sandbox game. It's not what you actually call a sandbox game, but that's what it feels like. It's just like, go do something and have fun, and it gives you very loose guidance to do that. So I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, so Grow Home comes out of Ubisoft Reflections, or Ubisoft Reflections. I always say it wrong, because on other podcasts I'm like, you're saying it wrong. It comes out of Ubisoft Reflections, which is a small kind of internal team in Ubisoft. And they've created really this gem of a game. I'd known about it for a while. It came out on the PC, I think, early this year, like February, I believe. And been really wanting to play it, and so I'm so happy it came to PS4 and was part of the PlayStation Plus lineup. But it's this beautiful, polygonal, Pixar-esque, animated cartoon aesthetic. I think they do so much right. The gameplay is really simple. They've got this kind of procedural vine generation when you grab onto these huge stalks of your star plant, because basically you have your sprout, and you start at the bottom. You start at sea level, and you need to get 2,000 meters into the sky. And you do that by grabbing onto these blooms of this star plant. And by grabbing onto them, it shoots in this giant star stalk that blooms and kind of shoots into the air. And what you're supposed to do is kind of corral these stalks as they grow into these highlighted kind of floating rocks. And the more, once you connect to a certain number of them, it grows up your central stalk, and then you go to this new kind of terrace, this new altitude of places to explore and stalks to grow. And it's really, for me, it was a meditative experience. Just the ambient noises of Bud in the World. I think the very kind of soothing soundtrack, the aesthetic, and just the simple exploring is fun, growing the plants is fun, and finding your way through this very open world is fun. And I think kind of the power of this system, putting a simple game like this, I hate to use the word, but putting a simple game like this on the powerful infrastructure of a PC or a PS4 is really cool, because you can say you're Fliss and you fall down to the bottom of the map
frequently.
Because you don't know how to platform correctly.
Whoa!
You can
whoa! I know how to platform. I know how to platform. I just missed pressing R2. I know what I did wrong.
Yeah.
I just didn't do it.
But you can, on the beach, you can look up into the sky, and you can see this tapestry of growth that you've woven into the sky, and it's really kind of awe-inspiring to see, this is the work that I've done. And even though I've just been kind of goofing around and hovering with my jetpack and grabbing crystals out of walls and just kind of casually growing stalks towards the sky, you create your own world, and I think you fill up a blank canvas, and I think that's really powerful and interesting.
I've taken so many screenshots of this game. This is a game that has done something that no game has done in a very, very long time, which is make me just stop playing and watch and just look and just take a minute to soak in the sheer beauty of the game, the same way that I would take in a sunset.
And sunset is pretty beautiful in the game too, I gotta say.
Yeah, absolutely. So
when you're sitting on a giant, you're sitting on the edge, the precipice of a rock, and a little bit of snow is falling on it because you've gotten high enough up into the stratosphere that's getting colder, and you can see the curvature of the world, and the sun starts to rise, and your purples fade into oranges and yellows. It's really, it's gorgeous.
But when you look down and you see the waterfalls falling down into nowhere as your
I love that. I love that structure.
Weave in between them in every different direction. It's like a tapestry. It's gorgeous.
So basically what I'm saying is, Fliss, you should take my game suggestions more often.
I don't know. I feel like I'm 1 for 2 on taking your game suggestions because Grow Home, unmitigated success. Really enjoying it. I'm going to play it all the way to the end. I'm having a great time. Please join me on Twitch while I do that.
Twitch.tv/Fliss of the North Star.
Yes, thank you. But the other game suggestion you made to me was Demon Souls, and I have to buy you a hat. Out of that one.
You're just butthurt because you suck at Demon Souls.
Suggestion.
Oh man, you are butthurt because you suck at the game.
I'm not butthurt. I'm a little salty, but I'm not butthurt. But you know what? Dark Souls 2, Scholar of the First Sin, is on sale as part of the PSN anniversary sale. Mm-hmm. It's down to $24, so there may be another.
Oh, that is a very good value.
There may be another Souls bet in our future. Stay tuned for October when Charles has free time.
You have Bloodborne too, right?
I do, but Bloodborne is entirely Japanese.
There's got to be a way to change that. There's got to be.
I will work on it. Work on it. Because I'm going to need a lot longer to beat Bloodborne in Japanese. That could be a lot of fun to stream, but
you don't need it so much. I mean, yeah, it's going to be hard, like, equipping, like, the right items and stuff, but so that's Grow Home. Super lovely, great game. Expect a review on the impactfactor.blogspot.com on Tuesday.
Yeah, man, that better be a great review, because the game has been good to me.
Oh, you'll see. You'll see.
All right, well, I'm looking forward to it.
See.
I am excited.
The other game that I've been playing that I've been meaning to talk about for like the past 3 weeks is this game called Code Combat. And so this is a game I heard about on the Match 3 podcast. Let's do it with Patrick Klepek, Sam Phillips, and Nikita Jackson. It's a great podcast. They really have unique perspectives. I would recommend that if you like listening to our podcast. I think you might find enjoyment from them. But basically, this is a browser-based game that teaches people how to code in different programming languages. This is something that I've been interested in doing for a long time, is learning at least some sort of basics of coding. I think this is a job skill that in the coming at least decade, everyone should probably have some sort of foundational knowledge of. I think it's going to be increasingly important. But a lot of problem with games and educational games, since we've moved away from the time where you have these great edutainment games that we've talked about on the podcast. Man, we've talked about a lot of things. It's nice to reference this podcast a lot.
Yeah, man, we've done well. We're building up a little bit of an archive for ourselves.
Yeah, right. Unfortunately, an archive that's only viewable on YouTube currently. But so yeah, check out our YouTube.
But it is all on YouTube now.
It is all on YouTube. But like a lot of problem with those games now is that they want to teach you something first and be a fun game second. And that never works. It doesn't work with kids because they know they're being tricked to play a game to learn something. It doesn't work with adults, because especially adults who are interested in games, because if it's not fun, I'm not going to spend my time doing it. But Code Combat has the feeling of it was designed as a game to utilize coding as its engine to be this powerful educational tool. So Code Combat is basically a puzzle RPG. You choose a character, and then you've got different dungeon rooms you need to go through. And then each room has you solving a certain task. Usually it's like collecting gems and getting to the exit. Sometimes it's killing ogres and getting to the exit. And you solve these puzzles, these kind of turn-based puzzles, by inputting code. And the code will be commands like this, move to this location, or yourself. So you can do this in a couple different languages. I'm doing it in JavaScript because that's kind of the web-facing development thing. I think it'd be nice maybe to use it on websites. But yeah, you can input commands like movement commands. You can input attack commands. You have different kind of you learn syntax and arguments and loops. And so I've gotten through the first dungeon and most of the way through the second dungeon. So it's like the Kithkar dungeon, and then I forget the second area. So maybe about 60 or so levels. And I've been having a blast with the game. It really builds this kind of. I feel like I'm coding at times. Like I know what I want to do, and it's just a matter of writing the right script to do something. And so, like, one of the things that I've been working with recently are if-else statements. And so, like, one of the things is one of the levels that I was on is you're getting attacked by a lot of orcs, and so you have an ability with a sword called Cleave, and But cleave is an attack that damages everything in a circle around you, as cleave would be. But cleave has a cooldown. It has a couple second cooldown, and so you can't just cleave because otherwise you would die. So I had to create an if else statement. So if I would say if this is ready, my cleave attack, then have the player attack use cleave, and then else if cleave isn't ready, have the player just attack enemies. So it kind of like creates this loop to like that you could see the code as it's running, check to see if cleave is ready and use it if it is, and otherwise just attack monsters before, or say cleave, and then if cleave isn't ready, then have the player block.
That sounds really exciting.
And then it's been teaching me movement and coordinates, because you used to just move, like, it starts you just moving between nodes, like up, down, left, right. But then I'm starting to experience some of these more open world environments where I need to use XY coordinates to move to XY to complete objectives. And so honestly, it's building a really cool foundation. There's a lot to talk about. I mean, the game does a lot. Like, the game is like obviously designed at kids because it kind of has a colorful, kind of mobile aesthetic. I heard on the Mastery podcast that people, as you get further into the game, you unlock clans, and you can join clans, and there's like PvP where you code versus code other teams. Like, you have to code in real time to like attack or fulfill objectives.
Whooped. You are gonna get whooped.
Yeah, I would get whooped. I'm very slow now that I've gotten to a level of complexity where it doesn't initially, like, I can't see the answer before the map even loads. But then, like, as this game is free to play, there's certain levels that are locked off behind a paywall, but they're like optional, and you can pay for extra gems, which helps you like unlock better pieces of equipment that like make the levels easier. Like, if you buy better armor, you're more likely to survive, but you don't need it necessarily. Like, if you need it, the game will let you know, like, hey, you need better armor to survive this level. But like, as you get to the further up and you're in the clans and these PvP, like, people get hired off of Code Combat. So developers work with Code Combat to like find people who are like at the top of like the leaderboards and get hired. And so one of the ways that Code Combat stays afloat is that they kind of act as a headhunting group for programmers. Whoa. And so they get kickbacks from the people who get hired. Like, oh, hey, we really like your person who's on Code Combat. We hired them. Here's the finder's fee.
Nice.
And so that's like, it's cool that it exists in that space. Is
this your plan for escaping the sciences?
Yeah, right. No, I'm never going to be good. I'm not going to be able to
Code
vote.
Combat. I want to see it.
I'm not going to be able to devote enough time, but it's really cool. My one complaint about it is that it introduces new concepts very rapidly. I kind of wish there were more levels to like reinforce the skills you've already learned, but in different contexts. So sometimes I feel like it's just covering a little bit too much ground for me, and so I'll find myself referencing like the reference documents as I'm doing each new level. Not that that's bad. I mean, I'm sure coders do that too, but it's a little rapid.
You just need to get good.
One of the ways they're combating that now that I've gotten a little bit further is that levels are randomized. And so it gives you a certain set of objectives, but like, which you generally need to solve the same way, but exact like enemy placements and gem placements can change. And so that makes sense. So then if you learn something new and you're not really confident about it, you could just replay that level and it should be slightly different.
A good system.
So I think that's a good system.
It's a good compromise.
But man, having nested if-else statements is so complicated. I don't know. Oh man, I mess up my brackets all the time. It's like looking for an identifier. I'm like, I'm trying to. It's like I want if a statement, then if a statement, then else for that, and then else for the previous if, and then it gets complicated.
Well, I'm sure that Bloxidus will have some words for you about this.
I'm sure. So yeah, that's Code Combat. I've been meaning to talk about it a long time. I'm playing it kind of off and on. It's a browser game, so sometimes if I've got like a Western Blot running, I'll like pull up Code Combat for a little bit and play like a level or two, or everything else. It's fun. It's fun, and I do feel like I'm learning something. So that's an accomplishment right there.
Yeah, man. Teaching you anything is extremely difficult. So props to Code Combat.
Hey,
wait,
what? Teaching me?
I guess an old dog can learn new tricks.
Little dog. I'm the big dog. That
was like the least impressive.
I'm doing like the DMX thing. Where my dogs?
Still not impressed.
Alex gonna give it to you.
Well, that was way more than I ever needed to hear. Hey, so let's
wait for you to get it on your own. Alex gonna deliver it to you.
Well, on that note, let's finish up with some odds and ends in our errata.
All right, what's your errata? Get through it quickly. You were hemming and hawing way too long during our first.
Oh yeah, that was my fault.
Yeah.
I'm the long-winded one.
You cut into our precious time.
I'm the long-winded one on this podcast.
Yeah, I think so. I think the folks would agree with me.
Well, we'll have to find out. Maybe they can tell us in the comments or on Twitter or send us an email. Great ways to get in touch. My errata this week is completely unrelated to most video games, unless you're playing Madden, because the NFL season is getting ready to start. Pulling for my Green Bay Packers. Snore on over there, plebe. Yeah, I am so ready. It's going to be a good season. Knock on wood.
Football
it's gonna
season.
Be great.
I'm so excited.
It's going to be great.
I'm
be
so
excited.
You know what? Cardinals are in first place. Cardinals, baby.
Yeah, well, I mean, I need something to be different from last season for me to get excited about baseball.
The Cubs are currently in the second wild card spot.
I'm excited
mind
about that. Dude, the Cubs in the playoffs. Oh man, I can't even.
Don't worry, they're gonna lose it by the time the regular season ends.
If I can get a year where both the Cardinals and the Cubs make the playoffs, I'm gonna be all kinds of excited.
Oh my god. Well, Cardinals, they're looking hot.
Hey man, but can the pitching staff keep it up? I don't know. The offense needs to step up their game.
All right. Well, enough of sports ball.
Yeah, man, sports ball.
Just kidding.
I'm
sure you and other listeners are excited about football, but I've just never been into football.
We'll get you there.
So boring.
We'll get you there at some point.
It's so boring.
It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. You're just wrong.
So boring. I'm not wrong. It's super boring.
Football is great.
It's more interesting to watch golf.
Whoa! Shots fired. No, man. Golf is the least interesting thing to watch. Watching paint dry is more interesting than watching golf.
I'd argue basketball is the least interesting thing to watch, but that's my personal preference.
No, man, it's golf. It's golf. I won't comment on basketball, but golf is definitely the least interesting.
Yeah, you and your football boys.
Yeah. So, football boys, what's your errata? What have you got for us?
We've mentioned it on the podcast, but I saw a lot of buzz about Rick and Morty, like everywhere on the internet. I was skeptical because I kind of feel like I've moved past watching like these adult kind of cartoons. Like I feel like Simpsons and Family Guy and King of the Hill and South Park, they had a place, but they don't really appeal to me anymore. And certainly I detest Family Guy and everything that Seth MacFarlane does.
Preach on.
But I want to give Rick and Morty a chance, and I've really been thoroughly impressed. It still has some of those stupid like late night cartoon humor that I think is pretty easy and lowbrow that I don't really appreciate. It'll make me giggle still, but you know, any fart joke would make me giggle. Like it's just kind of
just who you are.
Humans are programmed that way. But what I really appreciate about it is how it's crazy to me that the most imaginative sci-fi show is this like random Adult Swim cartoon. Like the way they play with these multiverse theory of existence and different technologies, and just kind of thinking about time travel and dimension hopping and what kind of things could exist and what kind of conundrums that would create in an entertaining and digestible package, I think is really interesting and often creates for these really great scenarios. So I'd recommend Rick and Morty. It's not the best thing ever, but I've been really enjoying watching that. And then all I gotta say is, show me what you've got!
And on that note, it's time for us to wrap up this episode.
It's time for us to get swifty?
Yeah, well, I think we've been getting swifty.
We've been getting swifty. Alright, so let's wrap it up.
Yeah, we've been getting swifty for the last hour and a half. We hope you've been enjoying getting swifty with us. Stay in touch. You can find me on Twitter at @thecfliss. That's at THECFLISS. Also, check out my blog, Fliss of the North Star, for my thoughts on pop culture, Japan, and more. It's September, and that means the blog is back. It's in full swing. I spent August traveling all over Japan, and now I'm writing about it. There's loads of photos and even more stories. This week, I wrote about my visit to the Gundam Cafe in Akihabara in Tokyo, which was every bit as awesome as I had imagined it. I also posted photos from one of the most exciting and dangerous festivals of the year, Isaki Hoto. So if giant robots, giant lanterns, or hundreds of year old festivals catch your interest, check out flissofthenorthstar.blogspot.com. I'm also happy to tell all these stories in person, or at least over the internet, so come hang out with me on Twitch, twitch.tv/flissofthenorthstar.
Getting the sweet plug. Thank you, everyone, for spending another megasode of
The
Impact
Megasode!
Factor. Megasode, the Reckoning. So if you're doing this now,
Megasode 2,
chances are you...
Megasode harder.
Megasoder. Chances are you found it on our SoundCloud page. That's soundcloud.com/The Impact Factor. All one word. Please look us up on the please favorite and repost our podcast there. It really helps with discoverability. So please also look us up on the iTunes store. You can just type in The Impact Factor or The Impact Factor Podcast so you can find us. And there you can subscribe to get to direct downloads of new episodes each week. Rating us there and writing a review does a lot for us. So unfortunately, since last time, we don't have any new reviews. So we've got to pull from some of these older reviews. So please, if you're listening to this and you haven't written us a review, please write us a review. It would really help us.
Please,
so this
please
is an iTunes. Yeah, please. This is an iTunes review from user Darth Chipmunk.
What a great username.
They write that. Yeah. Well, it's kind of an infantile username. This podcast just gets better.
PhD.
I think that one is clever and funny. I think this podcast gets better each week. New content, new discussions, and something for everybody. Great for experienced gamers and very welcoming to those looking to learn more. Oh, and Fliss the social scientist is basically always on point. 5 out of 5. Well, I appreciate the 5 out of 5.
Props to that
I'm gonna
guy.
have to disagree.
Props to that guy. He knows what he's talking about.
I'm gonna have to disagree with this. Fliss the social scientist is always on point. I don't think so.
Well, see,
I
that's
think...
just an example of you being off point. That's why he didn't write that you're always on point, because there you are, just messing up again. Typical Alex.
Man. Yeah, that's typical me. That's typical me. So thank you for the 5-star review. Sounds good. We like it. So for an archive of our old episodes, check out our YouTube by searching The Impact Factor Video Games or checking the link in the description. The Impact Factor is an extension of my blog about video games, theimpactfactor.blogspot.com. Check there every Tuesday for a new review or article. This week, I wrote about the intersection of video games and PhD research science in an article I called Overstuffed. Games and PhD science have a lot in common. I got a lot of kind of interest in that, so please check that out. I think it's a pretty good article that kind of starts to highlight why, during my PhD, I decided, hey, I should start writing about games in a serious way. I check there also every Friday for my curation of the best written pieces from around the world in gaming, a section I call News and Views. Also, every stream or gameplay video that I do, I make a post there as well. So for all things me, all things The Impact Factor, check out the blog. So send any comments and suggestions for the podcast to impactfactorpodcast@gmail.com. That's impactfactorpodcast@gmail.com. Follow me on Twitter at Alex Samocha. That's Alex Samocha, like the coffee. And until next time, get swifty and make an impact.